I'm looking at the teams that are there but not quite there. And you mentioned the goals. I'm looking at the goals there. I'm seeing if maybe they slide in here, maybe Texas slides out. Because I think Stockton's going to move in. Maybe somehow the goals end up in and Texas ends up out. I don't know. I would definitely keep an eye over there.
Here with Dead Soul and Vibes once again, and we are here with AHLPSN this week and LeagueGaming.com and on the YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in. Glad to have you here tonight. Gentlemen, we are winding down. One more week left to go in this god-awful summer league. and hopefully it'll all be over soon and we can just start worrying about the playoffs in the next week or two. Meanwhile, we have to still deal with putting teams out there for one more week, especially the poor teams that have nothing to play for. Still have to field teams, still have to throw ECUs out there probably now more than ever. But thankfully, you guys in the Moose still have something to play for. And, getting yourself into the playoffs. We talked a little bit last night about this. Vibes, first of all, hello. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Hey, what's going on?
Dead Soul?
Hello, hello.
How's it hanging over?
Slightly to the left. It's going good. How about yourself there, Sips?
We had an interesting game last night. Vibes and I were on the call of the Hershey Bears and the San Diego Golds, and the Golds really just showing us an awful lot last night. This is going to be a team that is really going to cause some issues, I think, in the playoffs. And, it's also a story of the Hershey Bears. And, Vibes and I have been talking on and off about this last day or so. We've been saying all season long. Bears and the we've been saying all season long that we think Hershey's in. Hershey's going to win this whole thing on the eastern side, at least. Probably they're an incredibly strong team. I'm not sure, Vibes. We feel the same way after last night.
Well, they certainly got their shit pushed in. I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
It was just a clinic by the goals. The Bears never really showed much at all. I mean, they had some pretty good players in that game. They had Fetcher and they had Dupe, or Pood as you'd call him. Pood got pooed on. It was not pretty for Hershey, and you really got to wonder what's going to happen from here on out moving forward.
One of the things we talked about before the show came on today was, what's really going on in the East. And, the funny thing is the Hershey Bears, and look, they're 41-22-9, 91 points. But here's a number that stood out to me a little bit. The Bears are 12-9 in division. They are 1-2 against Lehigh Valley, and I believe they play again this week. 2-2 against Hartford, 3-1 against Bridgeport, 2-2 against Springfield, 2-1 against Providence, 2-2 against Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So, not an overwhelming record against division foes. And you know what? Once you make it into the playoffs, Dead Soul, I don't think it really makes a difference what happens by how many points. I think I'm starting to believe maybe that any of these teams has a shot of beating Hershey in first or the finals of the division, and I think it's definitely possible from what we saw, the weaknesses that we saw last night, at least with the line that went out. I think we're seeing a Hershey Bear team that doesn't necessarily have an overwhelming roster on all three lines, and they played a good goals team last night, but as as Vibes alluded to, they really had no control over the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, on paper, they're the team to beat, right? I mean, they're the ones leading that division, and they look like they're that kind of unstoppable force to a degree. But ultimately, as we all know, any team on any given night is beatable by any team, and I think those stats that you've just kind of read out obviously say that. And moving forward, there's no guarantees that we can just sit here and say, oh yeah, you know what, if Hershey takes on Lee Valley at this point, for sure they're going to destroy them. No, I wouldn't say that. I would probably, without a doubt, start to lean more heavily on the Phantoms actually being able to beat them in the series, especially I guess if the games go the way that they did for them last night there. But I think all teams need to be sure that they know that they're not invincible, and even if you've been on a really good run, you can't ever let your opponents never underestimate anybody in this league, because the parity is pretty decent overall. I think every team's got a decent amount of talent spread out for the most part. Not every team has 3 lines they can put out that are all top lines, but I think it's at least spread out enough where we can have these kind of situations where anybody will beat anybody at any time, which is, I think, more exciting for the playoff situations that are going to start to unfold, especially in this division here.
It's I think the parity league wide is interesting, and I don't know if the standings are really showing that in reference to looking at numbers, looking at how many points a team is ahead. That might very well be the case, guys. I'll throw it out to both of you. I don't know if any of these divisions, I think the West falls in the same way, the Western Pacific, the same way that the Eastern Atlantic does. I don't care what 4 teams make it into the playoffs. I think any one of them can beat the other. And, how they go 1 through 4 into the playoffs doesn't mean anything to me in the West, in the Western Pacific. I don't know if you guys feel that way about your division. I'll throw it out first to Vibes. Do you feel like, the top 4 that make it in your division, there's no lock of who's going to win that? Other than, of course, your team.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay, what was that?
I said, other than, of course, your team, which I know you're.
Oh, well, seriously, and this is, all kidding aside, I joke around a lot of times, and I've said it from the beginning, and that's the other thing that makes me not be so worried about Hershey, because their record isn't that great against those divisional teams and everything. Our record isn't like overpowering against divisional teams or teams from the Eastern North, but it's not always indicative of the capabilities of that team. Like during the season, there's some issues with ECUs and all types of different things that arise. We are far and away the best team in our division. Let's just be clear about that. We're better than the Monsters. We're better than the Wild. We're better than any team in our division. I think deep down, I think the Wild understand that. I think the Monsters understand that. They look over at our roster and they know it. They may hide it. They may try to avoid it, but they know it's a reality. So you can't always go based off a record, because right now I think we slipped to 3rd or something like that. I told my team last week when we jumped into 2nd, I said, we're in 2nd now, and it's cool and everything like that. But we're playing the Wild first round, and that's when you need to turn it on. You need to turn it on in the playoffs. You know what I mean? So all these records and stuff, and Hershey not being that dominating in their division, I don't know how much it really means. But at the same time, you could say for the guy sitting in 2nd, 3rd, or even 4th, you know what I mean? Like some of these teams, it's just you lay in wait. You know what I mean? You're like a predator who's just laying in wait, ready to strike. And that's what it is now. Some of these teams know where they're going to end up as far as the regular season is concerned. But that doesn't really mean much. It's all about the playoffs. So.
Yeah, and it's also how you deal with the losses that do come when you have them. You also can't get your head too filled when you're winning, and you got to just go at it a game at a time. But how you lose in these next few games really determines a lot of things as well, because if you end up having guys that are just going to get upset with each other, or just, start losing faith in one another just because, it's crunch time and the playoffs are around the corner, and if you're going to start having any kind of destabilization situations like that, you're going to have to watch out and just be careful, because that very quickly can set into place. I've seen some of the top teams, even this has happened too, where, just have a couple losses or even just one, and the team almost falls apart from it. So now is the time for the team to really, each team to be able to stick together more than ever, and be able to just, be that team, to be able to uplift one another and not bring each other down and blame one another for losses and stuff. I know that stuff has happened. It does happen. It's just, I've seen it time and again, and, even the best teams can come crashing down in these situations, and it could be a very big wake up call for some teams, and we'll see if that happens to any of them. I mean, I'm curious about your team, to be honest. We'll see what happens with that.
Me too. I'm curious too.
You better be curious.
I have
It's
reason
your
to
team.
speak on this subject.
That's the only thing that's going to derail us. That's the only thing that could derail us. So the only team that could beat the Moose are the Moose. That's it.
Well, that's just it. Yeah. And your attitude is really good about it. Like what you're saying, with you being the best team, and knowing that and feeling that, that helps, the big hurrah. But it takes one little hiccup in the roster that can really derail that, though, that kind of attitude and that kind of thinking very quickly.
Right, but I've always been a realist. You know this. Yeah, I've always been very in touch with reality. Sometimes my reality is not everyone else's reality, but that's because people aren't on my level. But I don't think that we're the best team. It's not about me thinking or feeling or, confidence. It's the fact that I know that we are, you know what I mean? And there's a huge difference there. But that being said, I completely understand the fact that we could implode. We are a volatile substance ready to explode at any moment. And sometimes I feel like if we were in a room with a bunch of guns with each other, we'd all be dead. So that's I definitely see your point. Like, we could 100% implode, and I'm not denying that. I don't think anyone's denying that, but it's all about trying to prevent that from happening.
Well, at this point, I don't think there's too much. You try and get your team to this point, and you try and get them to be able to, have the chemistry and not have any major issues with each other, and understand each other's style of play. We're after week 8 now. We got one more week to go. There's not much you can do at this point. You've got the team you've got. They're going to take you as far as they can, and there's not much more than anyone's going to be able to do at this point, because you're not going to get instant chemistry. You're not going to get guys to change something drastically right now. It's sort of like you're sliding, you're drifting with the car, and you've got to just ride with it. Wherever it takes you, wherever you wind up sliding to, that's where you're going to go. All you can do is just hang on for the ride and hope that nobody really implodes. You don't have, a bad game in game 1 and somebody goes off in your own team chat or in a shout box and say, "Oh my God, I thought we had a good team, but my guys fucking suck." And, that's the kind of shit that you hope doesn't happen. But, we know, I think it's safe to say that the three of us know that there are some loose guns in this league, guys who like to say a lot of shit before, during, and after games to the other teams, to their own team, to their owners, to their GMs. Those are the guys that are going to be your problem in the playoffs if anything goes south. And I don't care how good they are. If they wind up causing any kind of chemistry issues in the playoffs, no one's getting over that. And that can be, that's one of the toughest things for a GM to deal with, is if a good team is struggling. We saw Stockton, get down early in a series last season and not panic and just go with it. And nobody was saying, "Oh my God, we're imploding, we're going to fucking choke." And all. That didn't happen. Those guys stuck with it, had close series the whole way except for the finals, and won the whole damn thing because they understood that it's a 7-game series and you got to play. But I wonder if there are going to be some teams out there who are going to have some players who are going to implode when the team starts having a problem.
Well, that's a daily occurrence for the Moose.
Right.
I mean, that happens every game pretty much, that we get down in a goal or something like that. I see GoHawks in the chat right now. It's my buddy GoHawks. Him and I, we have a very interesting relationship. He goes off on me probably daily. Calls me. I don't know. I don't think there's a name that he hasn't called me yet. But then we usually bounce back, and it's players like him. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat or anything because he's listening or anything like that. It's players like him can be the catalyst for trouble on a team. But it's all about. I feel like a lot of the responsibility lays on the management to be able to, not only deal with him as a person, but to also deal with the other people that are on the team. You know what I mean? And you need to have so that people understand that, listen, and I've told my team before, I've told them flat out, I said, listen, this is GoHawks. This is the way he is. He's a passionate guy. Mm-hmm. He gets just as excited when we win as negative when we lose. You know what I mean? And you just have to understand that the guy is a passionate person. And, he's going to wear his heart on his sleeve, you know what I mean? And you need to accept the bad with the good, Sure, and sure. I think that's something that a lot of teams can't quite get through to themselves. And, that's something that management doesn't get through to its team, that, listen, this is who he is. And you need to deal with it pretty much. You know what I mean? He wins games. If you absolutely can't deal with it, you probably should have told me in week 3 or something, and I probably would have moved you. But at this point in the game, we're in this together, and we're a team. And you need to understand the way that certain people are. I don't talk the same way as you. I don't act the same way as you. You don't act the same way as me and talk the same way as me. That's what makes people different. But at the end of the day, we're a team, and right now we're a virtual family, and that goes for every team in this league. You know what I mean? You're a virtual family, and you guys need to get through things together.
Absolutely. No, it happens every season with every team. Every team goes through their hiccups, and it all depends on who you got running the show, and also the people around you, of course, too, to help you out. But it's tough to manage sometimes that way, and it's a big part of the managing process, and it's probably why a lot of people don't bother with it, because they know that it's a nightmare dealing with some people. And that aside, I mean, just getting back onto the topic of with playoffs and just maybe some of the keys to the success of playoffs. Just kind of want to bring something up back from Biggie when he was on the show last season there after they won in Stockton there. And he mentioned something that I think is a very key thing, and we brought this up a few times already through the season with ECUs. And sure. I mean, the fact that this is the time, like right now, playoffs. If you can, the team that has the least ECUs, the team that actually is able to field those 6 actual roster guys game in and out, and not have to rely on those ECUs constantly, I think that's really the key to success. It's a huge thing that I think is sometimes. Maybe, well, it's probably not overlooked, but I mean, it's certainly not something that everybody has the luxury of doing. And in this season in particular, I'm going to be really shocked if we see any teams not using ECU at least once in these playoffs. But those teams that are able to field the players that way, or say ice the players that way, I think will be the most successful, hands down.
I can speak for my team, and I already have a map of ECUs for the first round, so
Oh, you're already sure you have to use several?
I'm positive. I'm 100% sure.
At least you're on it now, and it's not going to be some last minute.
In fact, I have some players who won't make a single game in the first round.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
That's not just one player. That's several players.
That's not a fun situation to start your playoffs with. That's for sure.
I'd like to blame these guys, but quite honestly, we're hitting into August and into vacation time for everybody. And I don't blame them. Look, people have plans and they've already made them, and they're not going to give them up even for a LG playoff game or even for the LG finals if they've got plans to go somewhere already. It's a tough time of the year, and unfortunately, it may be the toughest season to have to GM. Actually think it is because of all the ECUs, and I'm not sure what your count. Maybe you lost count at this point, Vibes. I don't know, but it's ridiculous.
Stopped counting. I mean, we hit like 65, and that was like 2 weeks ago. So I have no idea. Yeah, I'd have to look at the roster and count, but it's been a lot.
And I can't, I can't say, if you have plans in August, you shouldn't sign up for the season. I get it. You want to play, and even if you do have a vacation planned for the semifinals and the finals, you still want to play. I got that. But if you do have that, I'm hoping that a lot of these guys, and you can tell me if this happened for you, I'm hoping that a lot of these guys have told their GMs ahead of time, say, hey, just letting you know, I might be playing really well for you right now, but come the semifinals that week, I'm going to be gone. So just so you know, and at least give their GMs a chance to say, okay, I still want you on the team because I think you're valuable, but if somebody wants you for a good price, I'm going to trade you. They should at least have that ability.
Yeah, I was kind of afforded that luxury. I mean, my players told me after the trade deadline, so it really wasn't much I could do anyway. But at least they told me ahead of time. So I guess I'm appreciative for that. I mean, I would really hate to like this is the final week coming up. I would hate to be told Saturday night, oh, by the way, I won't be here for the next year. That would kind of suck a little bit. So at least I have a little bit of leeway.
Yeah, it is incredibly tough at this point. I want to get back to the Eastern Atlantic, and I want to keep on talking about divisions. There is one team I want to talk about, and probably a bit of a surprise that I want to bring them up, but this team this past week the past 2 weeks they've been 500, 9-9. But in week 8, beating San Jose, Texas, and Stockton in this week, and still, I think they're only still 5-4 at this point for this week. I'm not sure. They did it with 3 different sets of players and 3 different goaltenders, including an ECU goaltender who normally plays left wing. And that's the Springfield Thunderbirds, who beat these 3 teams, and Chicken Biscuit in goal as an ECU against San Jose, and a victory in that game. That's one of those teams that Hershey needs to worry about, because if they make it, and if they could if they could beat top teams with 3 different lines like that, I think Bry was the only guy who was common among all 3 games. That's a team that can do damage. I don't care what their record was this week. You beat a good team enough times in a 7-game series, and all of a sudden you're moving on.
Yeah, it only takes a few strategic wins at certain times in the series. And I mean, Springfield. You mentioned Springfield. I mean, they're not a bad team. Like on paper, they're a pretty good team, and they're probably one of those teams that is sort of slipped under people's radars, and could make some noise moving forward. Do I see them as good as Hershey? No, but
right.
They could put up a fight. I don't know. This division is and this division's tough, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna throw the stats up there for the Eastern Atlantic and the Eastern North. As you see, the Bears ahead 91-75 in points over Hartford right now. They've clinched a playoff spot, Hershey. Meanwhile, again, Hartford 75 points in second place. Springfield 70 points in third. 1 point behind them, Lehigh Valley. 2 points behind Springfield, Bridgeport. And, those teams, again, those 5 teams, any one of them can be out. Hartford did enough this week to keep themselves somewhat in control. But if they have a bad week, they could easily find themselves out of the playoff picture. They need to, they need to at least go 500 to really make sure that they're okay. And most of this league has kind of done that: 6-3, 6-4, 5-4, 5-4-1 for Hartford. Nobody's really been really been knocking it out of the park the last week or two, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch what happens in this division. And again, we may have what we saw in season 4, where we have a bunch of teams all of a sudden fighting for a final playoff spot in the last 2 days of the season. We could have a fun doubleheader next week with some teams still trying to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, especially the fact that this last week is it's within the division, so that could be a lot of fun. What would be cool, man? I think that maybe we should. How do we see these divisions ending up? How about that would be fun to see what you guys think. How do you see this division ending up? This Eastern Atlantic.
Now, I tell you what, and again, we'll go back to the standings right now. Lehigh Valley still is a team that scares me, and not just because they have plenty of good talent in this team, but they still have Tyler Lokey. And to me, when you've got that guy in the net, I think it's very much like regular hockey. If you've got a solid goaltender who has been playing well all year long, his numbers are great. He gets the most shots on goal, and yet he's got some of the best numbers in the league. You can, if they make the playoffs, they can easily take this division from Hershey, from anybody. They're the team that, if I'm going to call a long shot, I'm calling Lehigh Valley right now, sort of a long shot to take this division. If I have to bet money on it right now, I still think Hershey can win. But man, I would be nervously handing that money over because it's not a sure bet right now. I would say Hershey, but I could, if they have to play Lehigh as it sits now with Lehigh Valley in 4th, if they do play the Phantoms in the first round, I would not be shocked with an upset.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been big on Lehigh too all season really, and they can definitely give Hershey a run for their money. I don't know, it's hard to bet against Hershey though. But I guess you said that, right? You don't know if you had to bet, you'd bet on Hershey. I think I'd do the same.
Hershey's a safe bet in maybe in theory, just the way that you look at everything overall. But I don't know. The Phantoms, I think they could pull off. Like they could pull it off against the Bears overall. But I mean, yeah, if I had to put money on it, quite a bit of money, I'd probably go for the safe bet on the Bears. But
how about for starters? How do you guys on the final day when all is said and done, when the games played is at 82 instead of 72? How do you guys see the top 4 in this division?
Probably Bears. I don't know about the Pack staying there. I'm gonna say for now the Pack will probably stay there. They'll probably do just enough to stay in second. But I have a feeling that Lee Valley will take that 3rd spot. To be honest, I think they can do that. I think they will.
Yeah.
I do, and then Springfield probably taking that 4th spot. That's just my guesstimate.
What about you, Sibs?
I still see her. Obviously Hershey, I think is still going to be in the 1st spot. I think Hartford came back played a little bit better this week. They still scare me. I don't necessarily see them slipping out of the playoff picture, but
no.
But I think if they are a team that doesn't figure out what they did wrong last night and what they need to improve on it, they're going to have a hard time getting out of this division. I see Hershey. I kind of think Hartford's going to stay where they are. I think Lehigh Valley will wind up 3rd, and I think Springfield will be 4th. I still think they are a damn good team, and they'll find a way to get in there. And they still have some solid players on that club, and I think they could surprise Hershey. And you know what? If Hershey has to play Springfield in the first round, they're going to still get their hands, they're going to have their hands full with them. And even if they get past Springfield, they're going to have to play either Hartford or Lehigh Valley, and both teams are capable of, of surprising Hershey. So it's going to be, it is really going to be, it's going to be a much more interesting playoff than I think we thought even a week or two ago. But I think it's going to be Hershey, Hartford, Lehigh Valley, and then Springfield.
At one point I felt like Hartford was going to slip out. I really did. I don't see that happening anymore. At one point I really I wasn't a believer. I didn't believe that they were even going to make the playoffs. I felt like they would find their way on the outside looking in. But I'm pretty sure they're going to get in here at this point. I don't know. I think that one of the other two teams jumped them, maybe. I think maybe Springfield jumps them. They take that number 2 spot. Or even Lehigh.
Look, there's enough opportunity this week for these teams to, make this very, very different. But there's no, there's I don't know. I think they've kept pace. Again, it hasn't been, after Hartford cooled down, there hasn't been anyone who said, okay, I'm going to take over the reins and have a 6-3, 7-2 week to really show that they are on the upswing. I think all these teams are kind of, on an even, keel. They're not doing anything bad. They're not doing anything incredibly good. They're playing. They're doing enough to keep in this. Here might be the bigger story a week or 2 weeks down the road. Whoever comes out of that Eastern Atlantic, do they have a prayer against the Moose or the Wild or Cleveland or whoever comes out of that one? I don't know. That could very well be a sweep of the Eastern Atlantic if one of these teams doesn't get their shit together and start to really show that they're competitive. And I think they could they're gonna crush each other over the next week or two, but it's gonna be some tough battles only to wind up going against well, actually, not even your division, but the
I was
Eastern
going to
North.
say before they got before they even got to us, they'd have to go through the Eastern North,
right.
which
So I mean, it's not what I basically it's. I think we always knew it was not an incredibly strong division, but now the parity is a lot better than we thought it was, and Hershey is not a lock. Not only is Hershey not a lock, but I'm not so sure that, they do have a good shot if they came out to beat anybody in the Eastern North.
Yeah, I mean, I still put Hershey up there, but I would say they're probably weaker than the teams in the Eastern North. The Eastern North has some real powerhouses. While I see Hershey as a team that could contend in other divisions, they don't really quite have that powerhouse about them, like teams from the Eastern North do. I mean, Syracuse is a powerhouse. Let's make no mistake about that. I talk about how our team and everything like that, but there's some real legitimate teams in this entire league, and Syracuse is one of them. Toronto, those are some real powerhouses, and I just feel like. And it's the playoffs, so anything can happen. Let's just be clear about that. But just don't see it against some of these real powerhouse teams such as Toronto and Syracuse. They're just too complete. They're too powerful.
For sure, it'll definitely be an Eastern North team facing anybody going on in the West. I don't doubt that.
Well, why don't we move on to the Eastern North at this point and start to talk about what's going on there, because again, plenty of good quality teams there. Not such a clear picture about what's going on, And, in my mind, again, I think in this division, for the teams who could be there in the end, in my mind, I think any of the four that wind up making it in the playoffs can beat each other. And I think that it's not just because teams are faltering and not playing well. It's because they are all very strong. They've all cannibalized each other all season long, and I think it's just made these teams a lot stronger. Uh, Grand Rapids is still holding on. Utica, I think, can easily be a spoiler in this one. We keep on talking about the guys who are up top, but I think you have to look seriously at Toronto, Binghamton, and Syracuse. DC Lumpy was saying earlier this week, his team doesn't get a lot of love, and I think that's part and parcel to being in that division. There's just so much good talent that you could talk about one team for this entire show, and just talk about the depth that they have and the ability. But I think I think this is another division where the quality of talent is high, and they're fighting right down to the end. And maybe I might have favored Toronto a week or two ago, but considering all the moves that Binghamton made, vibes, and still they come out of this playing well, that's a team that scares me. You kind of feel like maybe they shot themselves, but they're still coming at you with the same strength they did before, and that can make it tough at Toronto.
Yeah, they're still good, but I mean, how about Syracuse jumping Toronto? Toronto's
Right.
been they've been at the top for how long now? We've seen Toronto floating around the top of that division all season, and I mean, I know it's only 1 point, but Syracuse jumps them, and they're leading the pack now. I feel like Syracuse jumped them once in the season, maybe. Now they've done it again here towards the end, and Syracuse is they're going to be a problem come playoffs. How about I mentioned the guy. I remember when the trade happened, and everyone was like they completely totally overlooked it. I mentioned Johnny 84 QC. I don't know if you guys remember me mentioning that name, but I mean he's 5-0 with Syracuse. I'm pretty sure at one point he was sitting on the TC roster for another team. But ever since coming over to Syracuse in that trade, I mean, he's 5-0 with 17 points. He's got 4 goals and 13 assists, and he's a plus 16. So, I mean, he's with a stat line like that, he's making the players around him better. And it seems like anyway that Syracuse has gone on a little bit of a run since the deadline. I mean, they've been pretty good. They've got some really top-end talent over in Syracuse. Toffoli is the center that I was looking at coming out of bidding. Lobo Dangles, obviously, we all have our opinions about him. And then Tickle My Sakic and Nazi, who's running the team. But they're a scary team, and you know what? If I was to pin them against Toronto, like let's just say that's how it ends up. I don't know. It'd be hard to not take Syracuse.
Well, I again, and I agree with Lumpy. The Crunch not getting a lot of love, but again, so much going on with Toronto getting back up on top in this division. From what happened last season, they were there and then had a late season dive, lost Mello in the last week, and just never recovered from it. And the fact that they're right back up there again, with Binghamton making the moves during the trade deadline. So there are other teams to talk about, and that's probably why Syracuse has gotten lost in the shuffle in all this. But you're absolutely right. I mean, they're a team that is on a 7-game winning streak, as we see from the standings here, and 7-3 in their last 10 games, and getting involved in a lot of 1-goal games, obviously, and still coming out on top. So, the Crunch, as you mentioned, a lot of good talent on that team, and in the end, when I look at what they've been able to do so far, with a good defense, with some good goaltending, and I have to look it up again with Lumpy, but he's one of those guys who also kind of got lost in the shuffle of players this season and who's available. The Griffins traded him over to the Crunch earlier in early June, and he came up and helped his team immediately. And it's one of those finds that Nazi was able to do and realize, hey, this is a guy who's got experience and can help this team. They brought him up, and he wound up contributing a good deal. So, that's one of those moves where a GM can really help your season tremendously if they're looking at the talent and saying, okay, here's where our weaknesses are. Here's somebody who can help us out. It doesn't have to be the big trade all the time, and they've been able to do that very quietly. Syracuse has done that, and again, on top in this division, and they're going to be in this playoffs, and they could do just as much damage as anybody else in this division. But going back to the question you asked before, Vibes, and maybe we'll throw this at Dead Soul to get his thoughts on this. How are the top four teams going to be in this Eastern North after Week 9? Who are they going to be? And then, who do you think's coming out of this? We'll start with you, Dead Soul, on the Eastern North.
Well, I've always been a big fan of the Crunch. I know we didn't really maybe talk about them too heavily throughout the season, but they're definitely a team that I've had my eye on and expected big things from. And right now, to be where they're at, I feel like they've taken that big stepping stone to be able to take that spot finally. And I think they're gonna be fighting tooth and nail to keep it. I think they're gonna actually keep that spot personally. I think they can do it. It's not an easy thing. It's not like a guarantee. I would say like, oh, with extreme confidence, but because those are two great teams at the top with the Marlies and Crunch. So that said, I would have to say the Crunch is probably going to end up finishing first. I'm rooting for them at least. Not that I'm not rooting for the Marlies; they're a great team too. But I think they can hold their spot that they finally were able to take. And then
he's Canadian. He roots for everyone.
Yeah. Marlies will be, keeping their spot. I do not see them losing that second spot. And then I think with Binghamton, I think they're just very comfortable where they're at. They're not going to be going anywhere else. Utica is going to probably, at this point, for sure, Utica, it's pretty much going to look the way that it is right now. I don't see this changing at all. And I think through the next couple days, yeah, we will see Syracuse and the Marlies kind of switch places maybe every other day just because of the winning, the win-loss record that they might experience through the next few days. But I think the Crunch is going to take that division.
Vibes, what are your thoughts on this?
I think St. John's and Albany are going to make a push here and end up first and second. That's what I think.
Okay.
The only thing they're going to push is the handle on the toilet and flush themselves. Yeah, I think this division holds. I kind of agree with what Dead Soul said, so I'll kind of echo the same thing here. I think Syracuse has kind of been the team laying in wait, and they've stayed close enough to where they were in striking distance, and now they've made their move, and I don't think that the Marlies are going to jump them back again. I think that Syracuse hangs on to that spot. I also, just similar to them, I don't think that there's any way the Binghamton Senators jump the Marlies, and Utica obviously is not going to jump Binghamton. At least I don't think so. I guess it's possible, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I think this division stays exactly how it is, kind of like Dead Soul just said. And, I think these are the four you get. So I think it ends up being Syracuse versus Utica and Toronto versus Binghamton. And, I can give you predictions now if you'd like them. But that's how I see this ending. And, I could see the way this division plays out already. But it's a good division. And I think the main thing that separates is, and this is going to kill, if Philly MVP is listening, he's going to give me shit for saying this, but Syracuse has a better defense than Toronto. Toronto, while they do have Philly and Berger, who are pretty good defenders, The rest of their defense is suspect. Even some guys that have had pretty decent numbers this season are playing better and probably a product of other players on their team. So, yeah, this is Syracuse's division, if you would ask me.
I think I might favor Toronto only because, again, and not to be biased, but I look at Watermelon and Mello, and to me, if they stay the way they are, I think Toronto takes this. I don't think they take it easily, but I think they take it. But we'll see who actually winds up in these slots. I still think Utica can cause some problems, and so Toronto may want to avoid them. But either way, if you don't come in first in this division, if you're second and third, it's going to be a battle. You win if you're second. If it's second and third, if it's Binghamton and Syracuse, maybe. Whoever comes out of that matchup is going to probably have to face Toronto. If it's Toronto and Binghamton, again, you're going to come out of that one and face Syracuse. So if you're in the 2-3 game in this division, it's going to be a rough road.
Are we overlooking Utica?
I think to a certain extent, yeah. I mean, again, still plenty of offensive power. I like their defense. I like their goaltending, and I don't think I don't know if anyone's taking them seriously enough. I think the guys in their division probably have more respect for them than anyone does. But I think when they picked up Farrell from Chicago a couple of weeks ago, a guy who was not getting a lot of press, but I saw this guy play. He is a solid player, and he is he is somebody who's added a good deal of offense to that team. They still have I call so what in net. I love his game. I think he is one of the best in the league and somebody to really be concerned with when he's in net because he could stop anything. I mean, I've seen him make some amazing saves that I don't see much from. And Dream Theater is no slouch either. So, when you've got a good defense and good goaltending, I think you always have a shot. And I think Utica is probably being overlooked by some teams.
Just looking. Last week when they were in the division, they went 8-1 within their division. The only team that they lost to within their division was Toronto. So maybe we are overlooking Utica. Maybe I have been as well. I don't know. I mean, they beat a lot of the teams in that division. The only team that could not get it done against was Toronto, and they lost. What was that, 6-4? So I don't know. They're a solid team, though. They got a lot of really good offense. I think their defense is probably the Achilles heel of that team at this current point in time.
Let's move on to the Western Central, and I think the top three are keeping pace as we have discussed this. It's not a big shock to see Cleveland, Iowa, Manitoba right there. And I think position number 4 is the one that's really going to be the one that's going to still be fought for between Grand Rapids and Charlotte. Chicago, would need an absolute miracle, and I don't think that's going to happen. But the top three, Cleveland has again continued to play well, 7-3 in their last 10. Iowa 9-1, and finally Manitoba showing some human trait and coming back down to earth a little bit.
ECUs.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a season-long battle. So, but you guys, the top three, I think are locked in. I don't think there's any doubt that it will be that way. Maybe you guys overtake Iowa this week with a good streak, but I think it's I think if you're one of the top three, you might want to see Charlotte before you see Grand Rapids. I mean, how do you think about that, Vibes?
At one point I felt like Grand Rapids was a really tough team to contend with. I mean, I still don't think that they're any sort of a pushover by any means, but they lost a little something along the way. Not exactly sure when it happened, but they certainly lost a little bit of mojo, you know. And yeah, I mean, they're still a scary team, and I'd still be at least concerned with them, but maybe not as concerned as I was at one point. They were once a really forward heavy team, you know, and their defense was always kind of a huge question mark. And their forwards have cooled down a little bit, so they're not as hot as they once were. And their defense has actually maybe even gotten worse. So um, I don't know. I'm not overly concerned with Grand Rapids. They're at one point they may have been one of my dark horses in the league, but not so much anymore.
So Cleveland, Iowa, right now on top. And let's talk a little bit about Cleveland because I really don't care if people get pissed if we do. They at 114 points right now. They can score. They can play defense. We know this of the team. Good all around club. You've played them tough this season. What is everyone else's chances against the Monsters?
You really want my honest opinion?
Now I want you to lie.
Yeah, what?
I said I want you to lie.
Why
don't you lie, and then Dead Soul will be your conscience and tell the truth.
Well, my honest opinion is, and look, I mean, people are going to say this is because I'm in their division and I'm being biased and everything and so on and so forth. Okay, Cleveland is a good team and they're tough.
Right.
You know, they're not going to be an easy out by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure.
When you have guys like Ferdays and Gumba, and Squall can be good. But I feel like Cleveland, honestly, in all honesty, and this is not because I run the Moose and because they're in my division or anything like that, but I truthfully, with every beat of my heart, feel like Cleveland has played way above their head all season and are not nearly as good as they've been. I think Ferdays is the real deal, and he's every bit as good as he's been. I think Gumba is the real deal and has been every bit as good as he's been. Mm-hmm. But then you step out of those two, and I know Freeze has a high opinion of a lot of these guys. Gauchi is a good player, but is he who he's been? I don't think so. Philly, I mentioned him when bidding, and he was a steal at 500K. He's a very good player. He's a very solid person to have in your roster. But is he super overpowering? No, I don't think so. Squall can be good with the people around him. And Beta he hasn't really showed up the way I think Freeze wanted him to. But then you step out of that and you get to the defense, and I think their defense is suspect, honestly. I think Sieg has been playing above her head all year. I think a lot of these guys are playing above their heads. I think T-Ball's probably their best defender, if you would ask me. Or Troy, maybe Troy. But you step out of that, and it starts to get a little hairy, and I don't think this team is nearly as good as it's been. Listen, they've accumulated 114 points throughout the regular season, and they are far and away the number one team in the division, and nobody can take that away from them. But I think that it's eventually their carriage is going to turn back into a pumpkin, and I think that's what's going to happen in Cleveland. They got a really good goaltender in Maximus. Bobcats is mediocre. But they got Max, and he can carry games for this team. Mm-hmm. But stepping out of that, I just feel like this team is, 12 o'clock's getting ready to strike, boys. So I don't think this is going to go on much longer, if you would ask me. They'll still be good. I don't think they'll get knocked out in the first round. I think it'll be either us or the Wild who end up knocking them out. Probably us because we're going to beat the Wild. So,
Detzel, are you surprised, or you expect to see Cleveland be right back where they were? Is it not a shock to you because it's the same management? What are your impressions about what Cleveland's been able to do so far?
I'd say this is exactly kind of my expectation of what I thought these guys could and would do throughout the season. Obviously we know that Freeze is a good GM, and he's got a good judge of talent, and he had a good group of people that he brought back as well, and got some new talent as well to help the team this season. They've been doing great, and I think, I think, not trying to be biased because Vibes is on, the Moose and in my organization, but I mean, I think he does have a decent point. I might not agree with every little bit of what he was saying with some of the stuff, but I do see where this is coming from and what he's saying. I think if the Monsters were to, for example, take on the Griffins, they're going to probably take them out. I wouldn't expect it to be a straight up sweep, but I could see them having a real tough time, taking on, either the Wild or the Moose. And, that's the big question mark, obviously. But if I were to be a gambling on that kind of game of, the Monsters going out against the Wild or the Moose, I'd have to, I don't know. I'm not sure that they would beat one of those teams, to be honest. I'm just not sure about that. But I don't think that they're going to go out there and just like win every game and just completely dominate like people might think. And, I mean, maybe I'll be completely wrong, but I still think that they're a really good team. But once the playoffs hit, we might be a little surprised, or at least some people might be surprised. And
they have the ability to put two really good lines together.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how Freeze approaches this situation. I mean, he can try and stretch things out a little bit and make three, good lines, or he could overpower with two lines. But I feel like, I don't think they have the depth of other teams, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's not me being biased or anything. I know it's hard to believe and say, how could you not be biased when you have a team in the division? But that's really just my honest opinion. I think this team is a lot thinner than people have let on. And I think, again, I think the fact that they've amounted 114 points thus far already throughout the regular season, and they've played so well and so amazing and have just beat everyone. I think, honestly, and I mean, we all know that there really is no law of averages. That's all made up. But I feel like eventually this is going to bottom out a little bit on them. And I think that it's kind of unfortunate that they've had such a good season in a way, because I think come playoffs time, it's going to finally even out.
I also have to say that I think that, because I know you're going to ask anyways, but the way that it looks right now, I'm pretty sure it's going to stay this way for this division. I don't think, I'm not sure you're gonna jump the Wild at this point there, Vibes, simply because of partly because of the ECU situation. And obviously if you're going to be ECUing anybody, like, if you're going to have to get a fill-in for Nylander, obviously he's your best player on your team. He's the one who wins every game. He's the self-proclaimed second coming of Christ on the ice. So,
listen, I got at least four. I got at least four of those on my team. Okay, so
yes, yeah. So but yeah, in all seriousness, though, I think this is going to look exactly the same at the end of this week. I think you guys are going to be comfortably sitting in that third spot and taking on the Wild, and maybe that's something you actually wanted to do from the beginning. Who knows? But
yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know. I don't know if we jump them or not. I mean, we're only 3 points behind. If we have a little bit of better availability this week, then we probably will jump them. I mean, we are definitely a better team than them. But it doesn't matter at this point. We're playing the Wild in round one. I think we kind of know that. I mean, unless something like absolutely out of left field happens here, I guess the Griffins winning every game and us losing every game, or something just ridiculously crazy. But we know who we're playing round one, and we understand what type of team they are. And if things end this way, if we end up in third, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, like it is right now, I'd be all right with it. I wouldn't really care.
Why don't we move on to the Westpac and talk
This is where
about?
I'm about to bang my money over here in this one.
Oh, really? You think this is it?
Yeah, this is the one.
We'll take a look at the standings as they are right now. San Jose, as you see, barely holding on to a 1-point lead over Ontario. 6 points on top of San Diego, who riding a 13-game winning streak. We'll talk about them in a second. Texas, though, has slipped to that number 4, and they are kind of following the Vibes prediction at this point, as you heard at the beginning of the show. And Stockton right now still 3 points out of that last spot. 5-4, 5-4-1 the last 10. So Stockton, not playing tremendously well, sputtering a bit. I really thought at this point they would have picked it up and gone into fourth gear and would have been cruising into the playoffs, but it just hasn't happened for them yet. And let's get back to talking quickly about that San Diego Gull team. It's interesting numbers. Since week 5, folks, San Diego went 2-7 in week 5. Week 6, they go 6-3. They beat Iowa, Syracuse, Utica, Grand Rapids, and Toronto. All right, that's 5 of the 6 wins. Week 7, they go 7-2, beating San Jose, Texas, Stockton, and Ontario. Week 8, 9-0. Cleveland, Hartford, Manitoba, and Hershey all going down to the San Diego Gulls. 22-5 in their last 3 weeks. 5th in power play right now at 28%. Average time on attack is in 7th place right now at almost 7 minutes. Shot difference, 3rd in the league, 191 plus shots more. And so they have been taking advantage of power plays. They have held the puck. They have taken shots. And getting the puck on the net, to me, is always a big part of this game. San Diego have just been tremendous the past 3 weeks. Maybe the hottest team in the league for these past 3, and certainly the hottest team last week. And again, as we mentioned, 13-game winning streak. So San Diego right now is a team that I'm incredibly high on, and I see them come out of this one winning the division. I'm going to call it right now. I think they can win this division. And they've got Trash and Price in net. Price has been playing well. We talked, even though he didn't play last night's game, his numbers have been really solid since he's come back and played for this team. And, you talk about 2 of the top leading goaltenders in the West last year for their respective teams in Season 4, now shoring up the net for San Diego as they lead into Week 9 and into the playoffs. I think this is the team right now that's hitting all the cylinders at the right time, Vibes.
Yeah, and, I was just going to say, you just alluded to it, but if I could tell you last season that I'll give you OMG Price and Trash Clown on the same team, what would you say to me?
I'd say how much do I have to pay you, or should I remunerate you in some other method? Because I would take that any day of the week.
Yeah, and now they are. Now that's the tandem that San Diego is throwing at people, and it's obviously given the league fits. Dead Soul might have a little bit more insight on OMG Price. I don't particularly know him all that well. I know him a little bit, but not that much. But it seems like since they acquired him, things have really been looking up. And this is a solid team, and they are playing super hot right now. And I think that they're good. They're a good team. They have Hall, who came down from Anaheim, and then Max 20, who's a guy that I've had my eye on for a while. He was actually taken in NHL bidding this season, and then somehow ended up back down onto the San Diego roster. So, he's a really good player, and he's been good all season. And looking at that game last night, He was one of my players to watch, and he did not disappoint. But this is a team that has, they have good offensive depth, they have good defensive depth, and they can be a problem come playoffs. I don't quite agree with you in the sense of them suddenly shooting to the top here. I know that I can tell you're done sniffing Stockton's jockstrap, and now you're going to start sniffing San Diego's. But I don't quite think that's what happens. I like San Diego for probably where they are. I don't know about them jumping Ontario. I think they're a better team than Ontario. But I think Ontario is also good enough to hold them off here coming down the stretch. And Ontario is still a very good team. And I think that, throughout this entire season, we were looking at Stockton. We looked at Texas. Now we're looking at San Diego. And I don't think that we've given quite enough credit to San Jose or Ontario. Me specifically with Ontario, I know I've been really hard on them. But listen, they're a really good team. And they have all the pieces that it takes to make a push here, and they could be a huge problem, in the playoffs. I mean, they have Zach, they have Orioles, they have DeGraves. They picked up Bake at the trade deadline. He's a solid player. They added Hobson and Risk. I think Risk came over. He was in Iowa, I believe. And then they have a pretty decent defense, and then they have solid goaltending. Looks like Sammy's back up with the team. I from what I understand, he had bad availability, but he's back in action now. So Ontario is they're a legit team. San Jose, I mean, I don't think we even have to really talk about them. I echo what you said, and I am certainly shocked that Stockton has been where they are this far on the outside looking in. But I said, you played my promo, my little beginning there at the start of the show. And listen, I until Stockton is out and until I'm 100% officially proven wrong on this, I am sticking with Stockton. I think that they end up moving into this fourth spot. It's not because Texas isn't a good team. It's not because I don't think Texas deserves a fourth spot, but I am a believer in Stockton, and I know that they've had some issues with availability, and I feel like they are essentially us in the Pacific West. It's just that we were able to hold it together a little bit better than they were. I think this team is up there with Ontario. It's up there with San Jose. It's up there with San Diego. And I really do believe that eventually this team is going to push into fourth and knock Texas out. It won't be easy, and there's a very good chance I could be wrong, but that's just how I see it playing out. If there was a weak point in Stockton, it's definitely got to be their defense. I don't think there's been any sort of a secret about that throughout the year. And, I guess we'll see here. We're all probably a little surprised that they've not done better this season, but I feel like eventually they will find their way in here at the last week of the year.
Hey, just to throw one more stat out, we were talking about OMG Price. He came over from Bridgeport. On July 1st, he went 7-2-1 in games with the Gold since then. 81.3 save percentage, 2.88 goals against. And I honestly think he hasn't quite hit his stride yet, still putting up tremendous numbers. And so, the Golds are going to play a lot of division teams this week, including Ontario, who you mentioned. And they are 2-1 against Ontario this season. So, they obviously have played some good teams in the West all season long and have done well against them. We take chances on the show and say, try and make some calls ahead of time. I just think the Gulls are hitting their stride in any sports. If you watch any season, you're going to see teams that do really well, and almost all the time you're going to see teams that have come together right at the end, have the last 10, 20 games of the season really show tremendous chemistry, those are the ones who are going to be successful. It's as simple as that. It's all part of the game. It's not just what your talent is, it's what are you doing with it lately. And I think the Gulls have done the most with their talent lately. They've done a good job all season long managing it. And look, they're going to be a tough team to beat. If anyone in the West wants to take them lightly, go ahead. You're going to find yourself watching the rest of the playoffs. It's going to be that simple. So, again, like you said, they're still very good quality teams. We said it at the top of the show. This is another division where any one of these top four that make it out into the playoffs are going to be, any one of them can win, and they're going to be a nightmare for the Western Central. It's just that simple. I just think the Gulls are the hot team right now, dead soul. And you guys, the Moose last season played very well towards the end and took that into that first round and, came close to making it a bit of a nightmare for your first round opponents. And, that's what that means. You ride a hot team into the playoffs, they've got a good shot. And, to me right now, they're a team that really should be, got to be highly considered out of the West. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are in the Western Pacific.
Well, I'd say that the Gulls are, certainly kind of a definition of a dark horse at the moment, at least, like you said, they're picking up the stride right now, right when it matters the most. And to be on a 13-win streak like that, especially against, some really tough opponents that they did face, they're just right where they need to be, right on fire. I think this is a team that I would probably put a little bit money on, going for them, taking this division out and moving on to the next phase. I think these guys are playing so well, and I think they're going to stay in that third spot. I don't really see them jumping the Reign again, because what Vibes was saying as well too. The Reign's another good team, and they're doing quite well. They're still getting more wins than losses ultimately, and they just have a pretty comfortable padding of 5 points ahead. It's going to be interesting to see if they can actually take that first spot from the Barracuda. It's a tough one to say. I think the Barracuda are going to probably end up staying there ultimately, but I think again with this division, it pretty much will stay the same and look the same. But yeah, the Gulls are a team that I think if anybody's going to start to have any kind of doubts about that team, they're going to be paying for it pretty dearly, because right now they're just hitting everything the way they need to. And as far as Stockton is concerned, I just don't see them taking that fourth spot. I really don't. I look back at the stats for both teams, for Stockton and Texas. They've both had one thing in consistency, which is 4 to 5 losses a week for the most part for the last several weeks. With Stockton, having a little bit of a better run a few weeks ago than the Stars there. But the Heat would have to really pretty much win obviously almost every game this week to probably be able to take that spot, and then hope that Texas kind of has a lackluster week, which I don't really see them having. And I think this is it. Obviously this is their last push to be able to actually get that chance, and I just don't see the Heat getting there. But this division is going to be something I'm going to be looking at. I'm definitely going to be watching those Gulls play, because it looks like they're going to be playing some exciting hockey coming up into these playoffs, because it seems like they're obviously ready for them the way that they're playing.
Vibes, Max and Hall last night, both getting the hat trick in that game. What were your impressions watching those two pound the Hershey defense?
They're good, and I think everybody knows that they're, well, at least they should know that they're good by now. They're a good tandem, and Hall had some success last season on the CHL team that I can't pronounce, Voyeurs or whatever the hell it is. It was the team with a bunch of French people, but he had some success with them, and I think it's carried over here now. I think he tried some luck up at the NHL level, which didn't quite pan out. But hey, there's a lot of time for that, and this is all the process and player development. So they'll be good. Sibs, I gotta ask. So you say the Gulls are gonna take over number one. Is it the fumes from the jock straps that get you high? Is that what it is? I mean, what, you sniffing the crotch mustard or something? I don't know what's going on over there, but think that's listen. I gotta respect that, Sibs. That's pretty ballsy. I don't agree, but it's good.
And I forgot to
Go ahead.
put my sorry to interrupt. I forgot to put my 2 cents in towards
Uh-huh.
Trash Clown there and Price, because obviously that tandem is a disgustingly awesome tandem. You know, with Trash Clown, we all know what he can do, and you know, defending champ of his own right from last season there, and Price is just a headache for everybody to deal with unless you know his little weak spots. But yeah, that's going into the playoffs. That's a great tandem to have. These guys are gonna have you know, some great goaltending to give them a good hand, and obviously their defense is just looking like they're doing pretty terrific job. Just looks like these guys are going to be a real tough team for anybody to go up against, and I'm excited to see them. You know, I think they're going to go right through that whole division and then you know, take on. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I just want to. I want to watch these games. These guys got me all pumped to watch their games. So. There's
a lot of good Western Pacific games next week. I guarantee you we'll probably cover one of those on Thursday. But even if it's all said and done in the Western Pacific by the time the 10:30 games come around, there's a San Jose and San Diego Gulls game, and no matter what position either one of those teams are in, we may wind up bringing you that one just because I think it'd be fun to see those two teams go at it, and you know, we'll make a decision on what games we cover as we get into the week, and we may wait until Thursday night, Friday morning to call what games we're going to bring live to you on Thursday night. You know, Vimes, I just want to go back to one thing. I think I know what my problem is. I treat the teams and the players much like much like dating in college. Whoever I made out with last is the one that I'm going to like the best. And so, you know, San Diego, you know, really got me excited last night. So I think that's why I'm so high on them right now. Now, you know, next week maybe San Jose, you know, gets me all revved up, and I throw San Diego to the side. You know, maybe that's the case. I don't know. We'll see.
I'm loyal. I'm still fucking Stockton.
Well, you know, they're they'll take you because they're upset that I'm not backing him anymore. User has been basically crank calling me every day, pretending to it's not him. So yeah, I'm getting harassed by them constantly now. Pasta doesn't return any of my phone calls either. So I got one more question for you before we have any final thoughts on this. Out of all the teams we've talked about and all the divisions we talked about, who do you think? You know, we mentioned Utica. You might be able to consider San Diego one of these teams. Who do you think, and maybe Lehigh Valley, who do you think might be the best spoiler in the playoffs this season? Who do you think could cause the most problems in their division? Might not be the team that anyone thinks is going to win, but could wind up, you know, maybe knocking off a team in the first round that wasn't expected. I'll start with Dead Soul if he has any opinion on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Gulls is an easy pick in a way, but I'll try to pick somebody different. Maybe if things are mostly looking the way that they are right now, I'd go back to the Bears and Phantoms and just say that I think the Phantoms would probably be giving the most trouble in that situation, and probably more so than maybe some of us might think. I think that's a team that I would probably look out for in that regard, for their division at least.
Vibes?
Winning a playoff round, like a team that comes out of nowhere kind of and wins a playoff round?
Yeah. An underdog, probably a 3-4. Maybe more of a 4. You might want to take more of a chance.
How about a 5?
That could make it in, sure. Right? So you're gonna really continue to fuck Stockton. Aren't you?
Yeah, sure. Give me that dick, Stockton. Let's go.
Okay.
I'll take Stockton. Give me Stockton. They're gonna beat San Jose in round 1.
Well, okay. Mark that tape. We'll have to pull that later if it actually happens.
Yeah. Yeah, a safer bet though, a little bit more on the safer side. Teams that are already in. Um, I'll jump on Dead Souls back here and take Lehigh over the Bears.
That could, that's one again. Before last night vibes, I I don't even think I would have thought of that. I felt good about Lehigh Valley. I think they're an underrated team. I just never really considered them being a possible issue for Hershey until last night's game and until I saw what Hershey's record is in league. And I think Lehigh Valley. I have, you look at the roster and again, a lot of good talented players, not just Tyler, but, JG's been around, JJ Loops, John Harcock, Johnny Z, QC, right? I mean, I pass you score. Here's another guy who, you don't hear a lot from him this season, but he's had a pretty good one already. And Rask is their other goaltender on this team. These guys come together now at the right time. They're going to be a problem for a lot of teams. And, I think it's a pretty damn good pick. They're still not quite in the playoffs yet. They've got to win some games. They could very easily be out of it if they don't watch themselves. But, if they make it in, they could cause a lot of trouble. I like that pick.
Yeah, it's definitely a team that could figure out a way to make some noise, especially with the fact that they're in a division that's not like super overpowering. Keep an eye on them for sure. Absolutely.
Graham Zeus in the YouTube chat is saying he sees the Griffins upsetting the Monsters.
Well, it's funny. It's funny he says that because I actually was kind of going the other way, and I was gonna say I was actually looking at Charlotte. But then I said to myself that I don't think Charlotte could beat the Monsters. So I think Charlotte could end up sneaking in this division here, but I don't think they'd beat the Monsters.
Well, that's it for the division breakdown, and overall a high-level breakdown of that division. We'll talk more about how the season wound up and eventually talk about some of the individual players as we go along. Just take a quick look at the scoring leaders right now, and Dangles is out there, first one to reach 100 points this season. For Days is at 98 points, Squid at 93, and work our way down to Deer Hunter in 9th with 75. Pasta's there, Dirty Deeds, who got to play with him a little bit last night in a bunch of club games. Real good guy, solid player, and hopefully we get more like him in this league because his attitude and his game is on par with each other. So, your guy Timmy Z is there as well. Bears is at 14th. So, a lot of guys we've seen before. A lot of guys that we saw make their mark last season, still showing that they are, that they're, still putting up good numbers and still being, productive. Take a quick look at the goalies right now, and I sorted this by save percentage, and Moose is on top right now, 82.7% save percentage. 2.51 goals against, Tyler Loki right behind him, and Headhunter. And those were the three top voting goaltenders in the East, in the Eastern Atlantic. And, you can't get a better trio right there. Watermelon right behind him, Rick Stoneman, a lot of the guys that we've mentioned today on teams, maybe one of the better goaltending groupings that we've seen in a while in this league, maybe the best we've seen so far. I don't know. It's certainly something we can discuss, but a lot of good talent in net, and some guys who we'll talk more about when we start getting to the discussion after the season's over about awards. That time is coming up soon as well, and we'll start discussing that as we get into the playoffs. maybe even a little bit next week. We'll start talking about the standout players in the league and start to get some idea of who we think might be the front runners for some of the big awards of the season. But that's it right now. We've got one more week to go. We've got a bunch of teams still on the edge. It's very similar to what we saw last season, Dead Soul. A lot of teams still in this thing, and that's what makes this game so much fun, when you've got teams still battling right down to the end. And there are teams out there who can play spoiler, who could really be a problem, for the Lehigh Valleys, who could be a big problem in the playoffs, but they have to get there first. So this week, a lot going on with teams still trying to stay in it. This is the week where if you're one of those teams and you're a GM, you don't want to make the wrong move. You want to make sure that you've got the lines that you want out there. And then, of course, with this ECU issue, maybe one of the toughest weeks anyone's seen in this league so far.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I know for me personally, it's just it's been a big learning lesson where I'm not going to likely be in any kind of summer league whatsoever again, because it's so much relies on the availability of people, and of course that's already tough to deal with on a regular season, let alone during the summer when people are going away or just wanting to enjoy the nice weather, or just doing things that are a lot more fun than sitting at home on a video game. But it'll be an interesting week, because we could very well see a couple teams sneaking in that we might not have expected, or maybe we just thought they were done, and here they are just taking a spot, taking somebody else out of the playoffs that's in there right now. So I have a feeling we might see one of those teams do that. And I know, obviously Vibes keeps alluding to it being a team like Stockton. So that'll be fun if that kind of happens. And then we can all hear about how Vibes was right once again. And yeah, ultimately, I think this is going to be a real fun week to pay close attention.
Dead Soul, can I ask you something? Is the prospect of that happening scary to you?
Which part? The
about me being right again. Is it kind of like the footsteps, like you hear in the footsteps? Like you're a little worried about that happening, aren't you? Come on, just be honest. Come on, be honest. You're a little bit worried. A little bit.
I wouldn't
just a
say I'm
bit.
worried. I feel more. It's just funny. It's always just an amusing situation. That you have such a clairvoyant kind of way about you.
Yeah.
You know what it is? It's very much akin to when Donald Trump says something that winds up being right. It's a bit scary, because
but you kind of feel like it's going to happen, don't you? Like, let's just be honest.
Yeah, but it's not something we want to have happen. It's
but
you feel like it might happen. Like you kind of feel like it might happen.
It's like feeding the monster. Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah,
you're helping shape the reality of everyone around you with your mind.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds very much like Dead Soul is just sick and tired of you at this point.
It hasn't been so bad. It's just it's not been that bad. I think
you have no idea.
He described you like a breakout of herpes. It's not so bad. With the right medication, you're
joy.
okay.
You have no idea, man.
It's certainly it's been just fine. I think
I'm the best thing that's ever happened. Okay, let me stop.
Boy, there we go. Any final thoughts, Vibes? I'm gonna let you get the last word before we get the hell out of here.
I did have a final thought, but now I totally forgot what I was going to say. My final thought. I wanted to, as much as I like to slip it to the teams in my division, I feel like sometimes you have to be the better man and kind of give respect where respect is due. And the Iowa Wild, the team in front of us, they just jumped us. They had a rough go after the trade deadline. Things were not looking so hot for them when they had that divisional week within the division. I know that I got on them for making a lot of moves that I felt like they didn't really have to make. But they've been really good here. They're 9-1 over their last 10, and they are actually 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 wins in their last 13. So they've been really hot, and I think that everyone's making a lot of noise about the goal. Well, okay, maybe not everyone. Sibs is making a lot of noise about the goals. And maybe the Wild deserve a little bit of credit, because if it wasn't for that one loss to Syracuse, shit, they'd be on a 13-game winning streak, which I think would match the goals. So it's just that one little blip in the radar, but this team has been hot. They made the moves they made at the deadline, and they're another team that's clicking on all cylinders. So, I constantly talk about how we're the best team in the division and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, but Iowa's scary right now, so credits to Iowa.
I think we were all a little bit on that train on the trade deadline show, weren't we? That, wow, the Wild have made a lot of moves, and they've been playing well. It's we were like, okay, we hope they know what they're doing, but it seems like quite a few things they've done before the deadline with a team that was humming along fairly well, and you know what? It's worked out for them. They have, they've made some moves that have, shored them up leading into the playoffs. They're playing incredibly well. Again, I think them and the Sens, we kind of shook our heads a little bit about them at the trade deadline, but it's turned out well for both teams. And this is you hope that when you announce these guys and a guy like Kostom takes over and starts making moves, you think to yourself, well, I hope he knows what the hell he's doing. Looks like he does. And so same thing with the Wild. I think Be Nice over there, correct? So, they made some good moves and they've shored themselves up and are getting ready to roll into the playoffs. And sometimes you don't know what they're thinking. And, well, actually, a lot of times you don't know what the GM is specifically thinking when, they've got a good team and they're still looking to make moves, but they have a plan in mind that worked out for them. And I would jump on with that too, Vibes. I think we may have jumped the gun a little bit about that, and it's worked for them.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, I still don't deviate from the way I feel. Like, it's not how I would have approached it, but if it works, right? So
yeah, exactly. Dead Soul, anything before we let you go?
No, I think I'm just actually going to be paying a lot more attention this week than I have all season to this this whole kind of I guess all the divisions. I haven't followed as much as I would have liked, obviously, with me being busy, the NHL duties and everything else. That's the headaches that ensue with it. But I'm looking forward to watching certainly the Gulls games, and I'm going to be paying attention to the Heat to see if they can actually get into that playoff spot. I think this is I really hope they play some good hockey so we can see some good games and have some exciting playoffs with them involved in it. But even if they're not in there, it's looking like there's going to be some good matchups overall that I look forward to seeing.
That's Dead Soul.
Wait.
What?
I thought Vibes always gets the last word. What's
Jesus.
going on here?
Fine. I stopped the music. Go ahead. It's all yours.
This is just, you see the way they treat me? It's just awful around here. I don't know. I got nothing to say. I felt like it was,
You never have anything to say. That's the whole problem.
I always get the last word, and now all of a sudden you're going to cut me off. Sibs is sniffing too many jock straps. That's my last word.
Folks, thanks for tuning in. That's Vibes and
Stop
Dead
with
Soul.
the crotch mustard.
Oh, jeez. We're getting out of here. Hope you guys have a good rest of the week. We're going to go practice.